Hello and welcome back, and today I want to continue looking at network devices. I don't know if you guys remember, but at the end of 2019 I said that 2020 I was going to focus a lot more on two things. One, software, and the other one was network switches and appliances. I wanted to focus more on Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi 6, as well as featuring more switches here on the channel, because it's an area that I don't think gets enough investigation in the world of data storage and indeed network devices in general. And let's face it, whether you use the cloud, whether you use NAS, whether you use DAS, or whatever you use, chances are you're using some kind of switch right now. Maybe you're using the router from your internet service provider that's got a modem and a kind of switch capability with multiple ports. Or if you're in a business environment and you're taking advantage of utilizing a switch in that area, chances are you are quite close to one form of switch or another. Now today, I want to talk about this switch here. It's a switch with its own hidden kind of secrets, because it actually opens up a greater area of network switches in general, in the business area of things, and also the home area more and more. It's a PoE switch from Level 1, and it's a company that I have never talked about here on the channel before. And a lot of the reason for that, and you're going to hear me saying I have not talked about this brand before a lot in the next few months, because switches are an area of the market that is heavily dominated by 2 or 3 brands across the world. You've got your Netgears, then you've got your budget areas like your TP-Link and your Linksys and stuff like that. And then in some greater areas of Europe, you've got brands like Fritz or enterprise ones like Cisco. These are brands that dominate this area, and they charge money hand over fist for a lot of their solutions. So although I am going to be covering a lot of their products in the next year or so, I'm also going to try my best, like I did with NAS, to focus on some of the brands right at the bottom. Brands that are producing solutions that are just as usable in home and business environments, but also arrive with a price tag that's a lot more conservative. Now, I mentioned price. The Level 1 switch here, full name the FEP-0531, catchy name, is a 5-port PoE switch, and it retails, depending on where you shop around, for about 60 to 100 quid, including the VAT. So straight away I can hear a lot of you going, what? That's huge. That's way too much money. That's so expensive for a 5. What on earth can this brand be giving me that's worth that much money? And what it gives you is a few things that, although it's available on other brands, is not available in this compact and affordable manner. So straight off the bat, we can talk about PoE. PoE, or Power over Ethernet, if you already know, fast forward about 2 minutes, but if you don't, Power over Ethernet is the ability to connect devices to a network switch that are powered by the switch. They don't need mains power, they just are powered from supplied from the network switch. It means you can connect devices via a LAN cable, that, a standard Ethernet cable, which can then be, used actively with electricity in a way that doesn't require them to be plugged into a mains power outlet. One of the most common examples of a PoE device used with a PoE switch is an IP camera. Security cameras in and outside a home or office environment that may be in locations where there is no mains power, and you can't just wire it in with trunking all around the wall. So what you have with that is the ability to connect an Ethernet cable, an RJ45 LAN cable, between the switch and it supplies both the signal back and forth, but also power to keep the device operational. But you've also got devices like PoE phones, PoE speakers, and PoE security systems, all of which have their own power draw. Now, most PoE devices you buy will arrive with a rating of how much power they output completely, and then a maximum per port. In the case of the Level 1, this is quite a discrete 60-watt PoE device, which is incredibly small. I mean, I've seen a lot of PoE devices here on the channel that have been in the hundreds, 150, 300 watt and more, and those are huge enterprise level switches. But because this is a 5-port, technically a 4-port switch, it doesn't require that much power. So let's look at that figure. 60 watt there of maximum output, dedicated to a maximum of 30 watt from any individual port. But of course, there's 4 ports, 60 watt, you're only going to get up to 15 on all of them maximum if you pull the whole draw, with the ability to maybe have 2 of them outputting 30 watt. What does that mean in real terms? Well, the majority of modern mid-range IP cameras draw about 15 watt. That's about your limit on those, and most of them are designed that they can't even take more than that. There are more enterprise level cameras that use multi-port injectors, and those from cameras from companies like Axis that are incredibly enterprise, they will require more than that. But in terms of typical utilization, 15 watt per camera is pretty conservative and pretty normal. With regards to a phone, a PoE phone, you're looking at about 5 to 10 watts per phone. So if you've got phones around an office environment, and particularly VoIP phones that maybe record a lot of the data, and are internet phones that are going to be connected to a LAN switch, so you've got the phone there on the desk and cables spiraling off into the corner of the room, then those phones that use about 5 to 10 watts, this will support some of those. Now on top of that, let's look at speakers. IP speakers, be they for alarm systems, for music. Some people use IP speakers in the shower. These are a lot more of a fluid idea, because some PoE speakers will draw as little as 5 or 10 watts, but these, obviously the audio quality you get in return is kind of relative to that, with bigger speakers that will draw tens if not hundreds of watts as you go further up the chain. But once you get up there, you once again are looking at injectors for the most part. So a 4/5 port switch with PoE at 60 watt isn't actually that crazy, but that still doesn't quite justify that price tag of 60 to 100 quid for quite a small switch. Now, I'm still classing this as a budget solution. It's very cost effective for a couple of reasons. So before we go any further, let's take a look at it. The packaging is incredibly dull, as you would expect from quite an enterprising type product. We have some foam. We have that external power brick. This is how the 60 watts is delivered to the device. It's worth mentioning, of course, that there is a little bit of extra power in there to keep the device up and running. We have an external power cable. We have our warranty information. Get a year's warranty with this device. And we've got the switch itself. Now, I've already looked at product images of this. I've not opened this up yet. So let's have a look at it. I'm sorry if the crackling of the bag there on the mic was annoying. And here we have the level 1 5/4 port PoE switch. Now, I'm going to focus on this side first. As you can see, if I bring that to camera, we have got our 4 ports and that 5th port separate. And that's because that port can, if you choose to, utilize that port as an uplink port. Now, for those that aren't aware, an uplink port is a more reliable and definitely more sensible means to connect multiple networks together. So the majority of you, when you buy a switch and you connect it to your router from your ISP or any sort of modem device, you just kind of pick any old cable and run it through. But you may notice that more expensive devices and definitely more established devices make a point of separating LAN from WAN ports, because they want to distinguish which one of those ports, although it can be used as a LAN, they want to know which of those ports is going to be used for the main upload and download from the internet or a greater server network, if you've got that kind of hierarchy in place. An uplink port gives you the ability to say that this is the dedicated port that is going to interact with the greater network or with the internet connection of a modem device. And by doing that, it removes a lot of the confusion from the internals of the device. Anyone that's ever connected a switch to a switch and tried to find a device on the first network from a device on the second network will know often a lot of configuration is required for that to happen straight away. It's very rarely plug and play, because the more networks you introduce, the more circles you introduce, the more confusion and the more the changes that happen within the IP, the address of every device. Suddenly you go from 192 protocol to 169 protocol, and then you've got custom-made IP protocols all banging them together, not functioning. Having that uplink port is important, and I'm not going to say this device is unique in having it, but I am going to say that that port on this small little modest device is still impressive indeed. Now, we've got our 4 LAN ports there. I should add, this is not a lag supported switch, which is a little disappointing, I've got to say. There are lots of features, you know, a quality of service control, which is all automated, I should say, in terms of priority and first come, first serve. There's also security concerns inside, and there isn't, not concerns, security software inside, I should say. And on top of that, you've got all the usual protocols and DA back end that you would expect from any switch. Mad seagull there outside. It's lovely, great living by the seaside. Now, we've had a look at those front ports there with all their lovely little LEDs working there in the background. But if we move to the rear, we can take a look at something a little bit more interesting. So if we bring that there, you can see that physical switch. And this is, other than the PoE element of this and the uplink port, this is the other reason why on such a small form this is a big deal, because this device has got a port-based virtual LAN switch on the rear. What that means in real terms, a virtual LAN or vLAN is the ability to create a sub-network of devices within a network, and it ensures that if you want to make sure that certain devices and users and their MAC addresses cannot see or access other parts of the network while still maintaining one physical network, virtual LAN is the way to do that. But a lot of the time you're going to use a software virtual LAN, which can be prone to error. On top of that, you can create a virtual LAN by connecting to an existing subnetwork and then using another switch. That's a kind of separate LAN, but again, unless you're using correct security credentials or the uplink port and using similar branded devices where there's communication on a software level, you're not really going to see anything hugely beneficial. What makes this different is you can physically set the switch on the rear of this device to say, I want 2 of these ports to be I want a completely separate network environment. I want 4 ports on one switch, but I want 2 physical separate networks, not on a software level, on a hardware level, and just flick that switch to make sure they can't meet. Now, you can put the switches together and then have 4 or 5 ports all on the same network. You can even set it that 2 of the ports in here on this virtual LAN are on their own network, and the other 2 work with the uplink on a larger network. You can even bridge these 2 networks together but still maintain them separately, which is quite an interesting thing. Virtual LANs are something that a lot of smart switches do arrive with, but very rarely do we see not dumb switches, but lesser switches arriving with this feature. And it's one of the areas, along with that PoE and support of PoE cameras, PoE phones and PoE speakers, that mean this is a far more modest and contained network switch for a home or business. And by business, I mean very, very small business, where this will live underneath the desk, under a table, and connect multiple phones to one network. Or a camera in a shop, along with PoE and speaker devices, as well as speakers and more, in a retail environment. This is a very, very small solution for business users that need small answers, that don't want to spend 300, 500, a grand, 10 grand or more on a network interface that they're not going to grow into. This allows you to jump a lot of steps and get a number of the features that the big hardware gives you on a much smaller level, and that's why that price tag is not the end of the world. Now, if you're interested in getting a hold of one of these bad boys, do go to the description in the description below, and do visit NAS Compares, where we will be doing a hardware review of this device as well as comparing it against a number of other switches throughout the whole of 2020. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Click like if you have, and click subscribe to learn more about switches all the way through this year, as well as NAS, Thunderbolt and more. And I'll see you next time.